You know, I dispatched Cricky, old Cricky, Critical Think, not too long ago when I challenged him on the latitude lines. Well, actually, he came to my video challenging me. So, of course, I'm doing videos debunking rotation, right? I've been saying that all points on a rotating sphere are being forced to turn left in the northern hemisphere and right in the southern hemisphere. And the only place you don't turn left or right is the equator, where the only turn you make on the equator is down and around the contour of the ball, right? So he came to my videos and he argued with me saying, no, latitude lines are traversed straight. And the way he defended his sphere was by explaining how a cylinder would work. We're not a ball Earth. It's not possible that this would ever have even come into existence because everything would move. This is not something you can live on because the ground is turning left. It's separating from the free moving water. If it's not separating, then what's the force here? Let's say at 80 degrees north latitude, what force is keeping the water and the air and everything turning with the ground? That's the mystery. What is causing that? What force is located at the pole?
And one other experiment we can do to show that a force inward is required to keep the ball moving in a circular path is to
being that the ground is forced to turn at all these places in the northern hemisphere, everything is forced to turn to the left. The water and the air are not attached to the ground that is being forced to turn. So what is making them turn with the ground? What force would that be that's making them stay with the ground? So that we could see scenes like this, like glass when the wind's not blowing. You were still rotating. And of course, also the air is going in a straight line. And as per Newton's law, an object in motion will tend to stay in motion at a constant speed and in a straight line. The water and the air are going to want to move straight. They have momentum. They're being pushed on this rotating sphere, is starting their momentum. So you have, let's say at 45 degrees north latitude, you have 500 mile per hour turning ground with 500 mile per hour straight moving water and air atmosphere that's going to want to go straight. So as they do, the two separate. The ground turns left out from under, or circles to the left out from under the water and the air, and would produce turbulence with the water, obviously. And this is why water moves to the equator of a spinning ball. But also the air would want to move in a straight line, separating from the turning ground, and that creates wind. And you need dead still, no wind, to see scenes like this. And so I'm saying this disproves that we're rotating. So the way that they've defended their sphere is to describe a cylinder. So Critical Think said, no, you can think of each line of latitude like a mini cylinder. And so he described a car tire. Well, a car tire is a cylinder because he says you traverse it on the tread. So you're going around, you're going in a straight line, just like the tread on a tire is moving straight. It's going down and around, following the contour of the tire, of course, but as far as left to right goes, the tread is going in a straight line. So I did a video showing him because I truly got that he doesn't understand. Here, I'm going to play a clip for you in a second, but he truly doesn't understand the difference between a great circle and a small circle. So the great circle is the equator. You don't turn left or right, right? You just follow the contour down and around. And by the way, the equator is obviously having a problem with that. Gravity's not doing its job because the ground is lifting up 14 miles high. That's the supposed equatorial bulge that we are experiencing right now, the Earth, right? So when the wind's not blowing, you see scenes like this were still rotating. And like I said, the water in the air would create turbulence. So you'd never see this. And so I did a video showing him clearly that the latitude lines are a turn. All of them are a turn, except for the equator. And he disappeared. And so, yeah, so his buddy Bob came on to defend him, I guess. But, so here's the clip of Cricky.
Now, pbrane likes to say that all great circles are straight lines and latitude lines are turns. Now, some of the literature does sort of say that, but to me, they're all circles, right? Every one of them is a circle. So why is one turning and the other one not? I don't get it.
Right? And so he said, no, you traverse the latitude lines straight. And I said on the rotating sphere, on any rotating sphere, if you draw latitudes, but we have latitude lines on our globe Earth, right? So on the spinning ball Earth, the latitude lines are a turn. Every point on the surface of a rotating sphere is a turn to the left or to the right. Depending if you're in the north, it turns left. In the south, it turns right. Except for the equator. That's the only place you don't turn left or right, but you do turn down and around, following the 8 inches per mile square, supposedly, that we have. Following the contour of the ball. That's the only turn that makes. All the other latitude lines start to turn to the left in the northern hemisphere and to the right in the southern hemisphere until you get to the pole and you can put a hula hoop on the ground and walk around it. You know, like do a little circle. So it's a variation of it kind of differs between a Ferris wheel. That's how the motion on the equator would go. You would be standing perpendicular to the center of your little disc that you're on, kind of like a coin, a nickel on its side. You would walk on the rim, right? You'd be perpendicular to the center of the coin, walking around on the rim of the coin. But as you move to the north, and I'll use the northern hemisphere, as you move to the north, you start to move up onto the coin, little by little, until you get to the North Pole. You are on top of the coin with a hole in the center of the coin, and you're walking around on the face of old Thomas Jefferson there. Okay? So Cricky said he didn't see the difference between circles. A great circle, the equator, and a latitude line, they're all circles. How are they different? And I really believe he's sincere. Let me play the clip.
Now, pbrane likes to say that all great circles are straight lines and latitude lines are turns.
Can you not see that?
Now, some of the literature does sort of say that, but to me, they're all circles, right? Every one of them is a circle. So why is one turning and the other one not? I don't get it.
Can you not see that?
Okay, so I get that he doesn't really... I thought he was sincere, that he really doesn't understand. Because nobody knows this about a sphere. Everybody thinks you traverse the latitude lines in a straight line. Or at least this is what they've presented. I really believe that they just don't even know. The trolls that have come to my channel over the years, it's been about 5 years. I can't believe I'm still having to argue this point. But my arguments are getting better. I'm explaining it better. So in the old days, it was JSS Tiger, Wolfgang Lawn, Too Many Hits. These are trolls that everybody knows these guys coming, or these accounts, I should say. And they've been arguing with me on this point that I've been making for about 5 years, saying, and so what they do is they describe they defend their sphere Earth by describing a cylinder, the surface of a cylinder. So I came up with the spherolander and remember all that stuff, and then they were coming out, that is correct, blah, blah, blah. Now they're starting to change their tune a little bit. They're coming out and saying, I'm talking to 1986 BBG, I think it is. I think it stands for Big Bot G. But anyway, he's saying, yes, it is a turn, but blah, blah, blah. He's coming up with all this malarkey. Now he's starting to say, well, I don't know why everything turns. So Michael Dunleavy came up with a reason why it turns with, even though you need a force. Here, let me play what this professor said about how you need a force to keep something circling. Here we go.
And one other experiment we can do to show that a force inward is required to keep the ball moving in a circular path is to, at some point, as the ball is rolling around there, I'll just pick up the ring and watch what happens to the ball. The ball will be moving in this path. When the ball is right here, I'll lift up the ring, and you'll notice that the ball will continue on with a straight line motion in the absence of a net force.
Okay, the ball is the water and the air on the Earth. They're not connected to the rotating sphere, so they're free to move.
Demonstrating that a centripetal force or an inward force is required to keep an object moving in a circular path.
And the ring is the force that's keeping the ball going in a circular path. Okay? So Cricky, who I pointed out, and I did a whole video for him, and he, where I showed on a hula hoop and how you traverse different sides and whatever, made a very good case there for it. He disappeared. Nowhere to be found. I've left a couple comments, or 2-3 comments on his channel. He did a video about me. I went there. I was, hey, Cricky, where'd you go? You're not going to acknowledge that I made this video or that I made this point? You just disappear? Wow, that's telling, isn't it? That's a big tell. You just disappear? So now his buddy Bob shows up. And he comes up and he's saying latitude lines are traversed straight. Or at least that's what I think he's saying. See, these guys are slippery, and I think he's trying to wiggle out here. So he says, if you set out on 45 degrees north latitude, if you follow that 45 degrees north latitude, you are not turning, by definition, relative to the surface of the Earth. Okay, so he's making 2 points here. He's saying you're not, and I know this is where he's going to wiggle out, because he's going to say, well, you're not turning relative to the 45 degree north latitude, which is a turn. So then he's going to say, you're not turning relative to the turn. So I think that's what he's going to try to, how he's going to try to wiggle out. That's if he even responds. I think he's just going to hightail it, So he says, if you follow 45, you are not turning by definition. So you're not turning off of the turn. 45 degrees north latitude is a turn to the left. So he's either saying that, but then he says relative to the surface of the Earth. Well, I have to go with that, because relative to the surface of the Earth, you are 100% wrong, Bob. The thing is, you guys can't explain. The reason you're going through all these machinations to try to make up and try to, you can't answer. I've asked them for years, point blank, are the latitude lines a turn? And they go, lakes are not turning, P-Blaine. You and your, they've come up with all kinds of nonsense. They won't answer the question. They just go off on, throw the math, P-Blaine. So here's Bob, and I'd love that, Bob, you want to have a back and forth? Because what I want to get to is, if 45 degrees north latitude, if in fact, which is what I'm saying is 100% correct, all points on a rotating sphere are a turn. The sphere itself is forcing the ground to turn. The shape of the sphere, by nature, by definition, Bob, the sphere, all points are a turn. right? So it goes from the Ferris wheel kind of turn down and around, but you're traversing in a straight line as far as left to right goes. It does that at the equator, and then it starts to turn into a merry-go-round. It morphs into a merry-go-round. So the confusing part for people, I think, is think of this, like I'm showing you with this blue ball. Cut the top of the blue ball off and think of it as a platform. Remember I did this? I'm sorry, I'm jumping around a little bit. But remember I did this rotating blue platform. Think of it as this platform, but it's convex, right? So it's a concave would be like your soup bowl, but convex is is the top of the sphere here, or any part of the sphere. It's still a platform that's rotating. It just has a convex shape. So like my rotating platform, what's keeping the arm that's pushing these, notice these pucks and balls are going off in a straight line. They're not turning with the platform because they have very low friction. So, but what's keeping the arm turning? Well, for one thing, it's connected to the pole that I have in the middle of the rotating disc or rotating platform. And the arm itself, which is kicking everything at a tangent to the rotation, which is 100% accurate. That's how everything would be pushed. And so the momentum that's why all these pucks and these balls are going off in a straight line from the point where they're first bumped into motion. Okay, so they're going off that way. So why is the arm there? Well, like I just said, it's connected to the pole and it's fused to the surface, right? So it's being forced to turn. How about the name pbrane? Well, that's painted on. So that has an adhesion to the surface. It is also turning, being forced to turn. Now, if that name pbrane was like made of dry ice or something just sitting on the surface, it would slide right off, right? Everything has its breaking point, like this record, right? It breaks apart at a certain speed. It's called something about rim speed with rotating discs. They break at some point. You can make everything break. Well, the Earth supposedly broke. Well, I don't want to jump all over the place yet with the equatorial bulge and all that. So the discs, when they break, all the shards fly off at what? A straight line, in a straight line. Okay? That's how they say you got the equatorial bulge. But anyways, I'm not going to go there yet. See, they're between a rock and a hard place because they don't want to admit that the latitude lines are a turn because they know, or at least they instinctually get, because where I'm coming next is, well, what force is there to make the water, air, everything not tied down? What force is there to make those things turn? And yes, I said air. Besides water, so at 45 degrees north latitude, the ground is turning and is rotating at 500 miles per hour. The water is, with its momentum, wanting to go in a straight line as per Newton's first law of motion. An object in motion will tend to stay in motion at a constant speed and in a straight line unless there's something to act upon it. There has to be a force to change that. There has to be a force if you're going to have that water circle with the rotating globe, Earth. Okay? So then my next question to them is going to be, what force is there to cause the water to circle with the ground? So that we could see scenes like this, absolute mirrors, absolute mirror water and like glass when the wind's not blowing. Okay? The water would have to stay 100% in sync with the ground. But then you have another problem. The air, the atmosphere would have to stay put with the ground. Any movement, and all of it, if it moves in a straight line, is going to slide to the equator, just like we see with rotating balls. Same applies for the Earth. Okay? So what's going to make the water turn? As the professor said, there has to be a force to keep things in a circular path. See, when he did the little thing with the ring, that was the force. The force was the ring. That was keeping the ball in a circular path. When he lifted the ring, the ball shot off in a straight line. Well, the water is the ball. The air on Earth is the ball. So, I'd love for you to get into this, Bob. Take this on. I dare you. What is causing 500 mile per hour moving water and moving air? What's causing it to circle so that when we have days when there's no wind, we can see absolute mirror-like, glass-like water? Not even a trickle. I've seen. I was before a storm, a big hurricane actually, and I experienced the calm before the storm. But this was before I was into this, so I didn't take any pictures of it. And if I did, I don't even have them anymore. But everything was a glass mirror. There wasn't a breath of air. So you understand, if the air is moving straight and the ground is turning out from under it, that means the air is moving to the right of the left turning ground. That's automatic wind. You would never see this. And then the same for the water. So you have two things. Busted. This is why they won't take this on. Right now, they're leaving me alone. Bob showed up, this was 3 months ago, and there's a guy, I think 1986 BBG, whatever, he's arguing with me, and he's stuck now. Now he just said, well, I don't know. Why? But. Yeah, so that's it. The Michael Dunleavy, he came up with a crazy cockamamie answer as to why the water would turn, and I'll do a video on that, hopefully. I started working on it, and but I just saw this one. I couldn't resist old Bob here. So remember, we have critical think, didn't understand the difference between great circles and small circles. See, you should just know, by definition, the only straight moving latitude line on the ball Earth is the equator. And that is a great circle. That's the only great circle. You can only have one as far as latitude lines. You can only have one great circle. That's the equator. It bisects the ball, cuts the ball in half. All other circles, and I'm surprised you don't know this, Bob. You did stuff on great circles, but the small circles, the other latitude lines are called small circles or parallels. They are smaller. And by definition, if the only straight moving circle is the great circle and the equator, what would it make the smaller ones there, Bob? Turns. In the northern hemisphere, you turn to the left. As you move toward the pole, you turn, the turn gets sharper and sharper. The speed decreases, but the turn gets sharper and sharper and sharper till, like I said, you get to the North Pole, put a hula hoop over the North Pole, and walk around it. Are you going to claim that latitude line is not a turn? I mean, this is so ridiculous. So I look forward to it, Bob. Is 45 degrees north latitude, if you traverse that, or the ground itself, if you just sit on the ground and it's moving, is it forcing you to turn? If it's not, I don't understand what the equatorial bulge is all about. Why did the Earth bulge? Well, let me give you a quick rundown, a quick explanation of the equatorial bulge. Supposedly our Earth, when it was formed, got into this spin, okay? It would have never even happened. This is fictitious. This is a fairy tale. This does not exist. Because everything would have had to get up to speed and rotating and stay in place. Everything would move to the equator. That's what a rotating sphere is going to do. A rotating ball, as we see. Oh yeah, but people, that ball doesn't have gravity of its own. The Earth has gravity. Gravity, as I've said in many videos, aids in things going straight. Because the great circle shares the center of the sphere. So gravity would aid, and the great circle is kind of like a little orbit around the Earth. And all orbits, these fictitious orbits, have to be around the center of the Earth. That's why they're geostationary satellites. They know enough to say they have to be over the equator. Okay, I don't want to go off into that. So anyway, so the Earth was spinning 1,000 miles per hour at the equator. Gravity could not do its job. Ultimately, it held it down, right? Supposedly, but it couldn't do the job as far as maintaining the original circumference of the sphere, the original shape of the sphere. It bulged, so the ground lifted. So imagine this ground doing, it's like this airplane, it's doing about 1,000 miles per hour. right, as it whizzes over the guy's head. Okay, that's the ground. So the ground cannot negotiate the 8 inches per mile square. It's lifting. Oh, and by the way, ask this pilot if he has to nose down to follow that 8 inches per mile square, right? That they say that the ground couldn't negotiate the 1,000-mile-per-hour moving equator lifted up 14 miles high. Is this pilot worried about that? No, because it's not real. Right? So it's lifting to the tune of 14 miles high, almost twice the height of a commercial airliner. So what happens then to the ground around it and the ground under it? Well, it leaves a void in the dirt and the rock, doesn't it? There's a void. So what happens is all the other latitude lines start to fill in behind it, because now they're turning left, the latitude lines, but they want to go straight, even though the ground in the northern, I'll just use the northern latitude, is turning to the left. The ground and the water and the air and everything wants to go straight. So if it can move, it's going to move as far as the ground goes, because they say the ground's malleable. And I didn't make up the equatorial bulge. Newton made this up, and so did Neil deGrasse.
It's oblate.
Yes, thank you, Neil. It's oblate.
It's oblate.
Yes, thank you so much.
It's oblate.
Yep. Okay, so that ground lifted. So then the other ground fills in behind it. And then you have all the way to the poles. The poles are basically doing nothing. You're standing there and you're like standing on a 24-hour clock, you know, and you're doing one circle in 24 hours. So you're essentially not moving. That ground, to fill in its void, just collapsed. Okay, so the poles collapse in. I mean, this is calamitous. This is ridiculous. And do you know, if you went to the beach right now and dug a big hole, or dug any size hole, it should immediately fill in towards the south, towards the equator. It doesn't, does it? No, because this is fictitious. And when the wind's not blowing, we see dead still water telling you this is fictitious. It's not possible. Okay, so that's how the equatorial bulge. It started at the equator, lifting up, then the ground filled in behind it, the poles collapsed in. And this is what they're telling us we live on. All of this to avoid the biblical account. This is how far these people will go to not have to be, under the jurisdiction, if you will, of God. Okay? So that's it. So Bob, let me repeat what he said here. So if you set out on 45 degrees north latitude, if you follow 45, you are not turning by definition. That's the part where he's probably saying, if you're on 45, you're always on 45, so you're not turning. Because he looks at this picture and sees, look, the latitude lines look straight. That's what Cricky thought. Well, they're not straight. Look at my blue ball here. Okay? I'll give you a demonstration of that in a second. Okay, so it's not turning by definition relative to the surface of the Earth. Oh, now wait a minute. The surface of the Earth, you absolutely are. Okay, here's my blue ball. Check this out. All right, I have a car, a Hot Wheel. This Hot Wheels car goes straight. Okay, so I'm here at this is about 50 degrees north latitude, this line right here. And see the car? Going straight. That's on the surface, Bob, relative to the surface of the Earth. That latitude line is a turn. They won't admit. It's ridiculous. Okay? The latitude line is a turn. Now, look at the same car on the equator. That's a great circle. That's what I said. This is like a Ferris wheel. The car, you wouldn't steer the wheel left or right. You just go straight over, right? But as you move toward the poles, you start to turn the wheel to the left, and you have to turn it more and more and more till you get to the North Pole. You got to cut the wheel all the way around and just make a dead hard circle around the North Pole. That's how it works. And then I have this car just to show you. You can see that's a turn. I have it taped on, so I'm spinning it. You can see that's a turn. Now remember, think of the platform, my blue platform showing the balls shooting off in a straight line. Well, this car is going to do the same thing. And so that you're not confused, cut the top of this ball just below the car, cut that off, so you just see the top from the North Pole to the car, and that's a convex rotating platform. That's all. It will still shoot off in a straight line. And as the professor says, unless there's a force located at the pole that would keep this circling. If that's the case, what's that force? Okay, so we're done with that. That's it. This is a killer to the globe. It's not possible that we would ever see a scene like this with 100% mirrored finish, no rippling at the shore, nothing. Because when there's no wind, you experience nothing. In a lake, zero. Or a pond or anything else. All right? Okay, so we'll talk at you soon. I think I covered everything. If I didn't, I'll add it. Okay, talk to you later. Bye.